shit.
Ew.
Type shit.
Alright, so I guess we'll just jump right into it. But today, instead of Luke hosting the podcast, I'm going to be hosting the podcast. And we're going to go on things about leadership, how to become a good leader, what makes a good leader, anything in that nature. So just right off the bat, Luke, what I really wanted to ask you was, what does it mean to you to be a leader?
Well, it means everything to me to be a leader. Because I want to be a role model for people. So the best way to do that is by being a leader, leading by example. Yeah, and I feel like we all should be leaders in every aspect of our life.
Yeah. Do you think being a leader means you have to be the center of attention necessarily?
No,
or?
absolutely not. You can be a leader and not say a word just by living by leader-centric principles. For example, I don't know, you can inhibit qualities of being a leader without drawing all the attention yourself. You don't have to try to get the attention. It just comes naturally.
Okay. So just by being the example, you're saying?
Exactly. Yes.
Sweet. I guess with that being said, when do you think was the first time you had to step up and become that leader and be the example to show everyone else what to do in a particular situation? Any time, when was that first time you felt you had to do that?
There's a couple times that I'm thinking of, but if we wanted to go way back, I'd think on the soccer field growing up, specifically in middle school, 8th grade, I always felt like I had to blaze the path, both physically and how you carried yourself on and off the field. But then I guess where I was actually applying leadership techniques would be at the golf course where I worked at, when I had that opportunity to step into a role where I had a lot more responsibilities. So I had to teach people how to do the job or manage a schedule for people. That was when I first started to actually be conscious that I was being a leader for these people.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember any time in particular when you felt like you really brought someone to the next level at the golf course?
Yeah. Anybody that ever worked there, I never would ask anybody to do something that I had never gone through myself. So whether it was taking out the trash or washing the golf cart in the right way and being patient with people, because it started off only me and Ryan, and then every single other person that came on after that, whether it was Ben Astor, Tommy Sheedy, Billy Bassett, and the list goes on.
Yeah.
It was really just about being patient with people and letting them learn how to do it.
Okay, that makes sense. Was there anyone in particular that you took an example from at the golf course? Did you kind of have to trailblaze your own path?
No, there was this one kid. His name was Jacob Whiteman. I don't know if you ever would have heard of this kid before.
I don't think I have.
He graduated the same year as Matt Lawler, Olivia Sarantopoulos.
So quite a bit older than
yeah.
that. Okay.
But he kind of had a similar role for when I first started there to me, and he would show me how to park the golf carts, and even just like little things, like the intangibles.
Yeah.
But he ended up quitting at a certain point, and then
Naturally, yeah.
from there, the rest is history.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And then, I guess, with all that, so you've had a lot of experience being a leader before, going through things like that. But what do you think the most important? No. What has been your greatest example of being a leader? Like, when was the time you felt like you had to, like, biggest role you've taken place as a leader?
This year, just got done with it, being an orientation leader, because this was my second year doing it.
Yeah.
For the school, and so like as a first time person last year, like you're really taking in a lot.
Yeah.
And so having already gone through the process once before, I felt like this year I really wanted to like take some of those qualities that were really impactful for me as a first time orientation leader,
Yeah.
and then like use them myself, as well as everything else I bring to the table, to be that like really impactful person for new first time orientation leaders this year. And I think that I was very successful in that, and like a lot of like I just felt really good about like how I left things, like knowing that I'm not going to be going back to like this team next year, but there will be people that will remember me like that. Like I always think that like the best thing about like if you want to be the strongest leader, you need to like make sure your company or your team can run without you there the same way that it would if you were there. Like so. Like that was something I was really trying to do at the golf course. Granted, it was a little bit harder because we have a figure called Lyman there.
Yeah.
But I was trying to set up, like, it ended up being like a successor for myself. It ended up being Jamie Sheedy, and like he even this summer like took over doing like the schedule and a lot of things I used to do. I don't know like where things are at nowadays, but same kind of concept.
Can't imagine Jamie Sheedy's letting you down.
No. Shut up, Jamie.
Yeah, seriously. Watch this episode one day. But so you've talked about how you have to lead by example. You want your team to be able to run without you present, things like that. But what do you think out of all those different aspects is the most important part of being a leader? Is it the ability to have your team run without you, or maybe is it just the leading by example?
No, I think it's actually the ability to be vulnerable, like to be like, hey look, at first I didn't know how to do this, and then because it almost sort of gives you a little bit more like credibility, because you can see like how you've grown. And like that also can go with being vulnerable, like admitting when you fuck up in front of everybody, and like taking 100% accountability for that, as well as like praising people publicly. Like so like one of the things that I tried to do a lot was, because they would pass around the microphone for like to speak in front of the team a lot, especially during training, and what I would do is I would praise a lot of the new first time people, because it just like I feel like it makes them feel like they belong more. And as well as if you ever have to like criticize somebody, to do it like privately. So it's like praise publicly, criticize privately, and then just be vulnerable, like be like an open book, have humility, like and never have an ego, like always keep yourself in check.
That was fire. That was so good. That was like, I didn't know where you were going to go with that. What you were going to say was the best, but that was fire. So, I don't even like, I feel like I can't get you to say something better than that. So obviously you just talked about how humility is such an important part of that. And then the praising publicly. So is that something that someone did to you, or did you just learn that by observation?
Oh,
Like, did somebody come to you and be like, that's how you learned how to do it?
I don't think so. Like, I definitely can remember growing up, like, getting criticized in front of a lot of people is one of the worst feelings.
Yeah.
It's like for me, and so it's like that's just something I would never want to do to somebody else.
Yeah.
And then as far as like, I just think that the last couple of years I've been really trying to just like be like a positive impact, and I just think that that's probably one of the best ways to do it. And it has to be like sincere too. Like you can't give like a half-assed like praise, like
Yeah. Can't be like, that's a sweet shirt when they're wearing a shirt that's like 5 sizes too big for them.
Yeah, like
you recognize
it's
when
got to be like
yeah.
authentic.
Mhm.
And as far as where I like picked that up from, I want to say that that was like a similar concept in a couple different books that I've read over the last year or two.
Yeah, it's just positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then just to go the other direction too. So obviously you've taken the route of criticism in private. What kind of reactions do you get from when you like help people, not necessarily even criticism, but just helping them correct something they might not be doing to their full potential? I think that, how do you feel the response is greater in private than it is in public?
Well, it's tricky because everybody is different, right? So like, I could go ahead and criticize somebody in private, and then they would just be like, oh, they're just telling me that and not do anything about it. So from there, I don't really know. I'm still learning like what would be the next best thing to do. Like,
Yeah.
like, because that has happened a couple times.
Yeah.
But as far as most of the time, if you have somebody that like actually has like the initiative or the drive to like want to be good at this thing, like that, and they respect you and you're criticizing them in private, that's enough to see some changes.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the people? So obviously, people who are willing to change have a drive to get better and trust you. Do you think the people who don't necessarily have the will to change, it's a lack of trust towards you, or more often a lack of drive to improve on those skills or improve on?
I think it's a lack of drive, and I don't necessarily. I think it's like a lack of self-awareness to be like to a lack of like self-awareness to be able to be like, okay, I'm not doing what I should be doing. Like they think that they're already doing everything the best that they could be doing.
Yeah.
So
Do you think that comes from maybe a lack of humility to admit that they're wrong?
yeah, that's another word that you can use there.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it goes hand in hand. And then, throughout the time, obviously, you've met a lot of people on the way, but who has been your, outside of maybe like books you've read, but who, like, as a person has been your greatest inspirations for leadership?
I'll use two more orientation examples.
Okay.
So from last year when I was a first time orientation leader, I would say that like these two people had the biggest impacts on me.
Okay.
And as like in terms of being like an inspiring leader.
Yeah.
Their names are Danny Harrington and Audrey McMillan. So if y'all ever see this, shout out to you two. But
yeah,
I say Danny because when I first like stepped into the program last year, like I was very reserved. I didn't know too many people, but this dude just like absolutely fearless speaking in front of anybody, and he's just like so outgoing, and it really like inspired me to like step out of my comfort zone and do some of that. And so this year I definitely think I did that a lot more.
Yeah.
And then I say Audrey because she's just the most selfless person ever. Like, oh my God, like this girl would do anything for anybody, no questions asked. And it was never would complain about anything. Just the most joyful person ever, like straight up.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So do you think the combination of two very inspiring but very different personalities kind of had like you grabbed and pulled pieces that worked best with you from both of them?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's incredible. And then just going into the next thing, have you ever felt like there was a time when you were a leader but you didn't quite have the performance as a leader that you wanted to have in a particular situation?
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing that situation? You don't have to if you don't want to, but
I think a lot of my shortcomings would have to do with like disagreements with Lyman at the golf course, because he would want to do things his way, and I'd be like, well, there's better ways that we could be doing this, but it was his way.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I just never was able to like crack that or get by that, and then it affected in like me maybe like letting some people down. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but like I don't know what else I really could have done about it.
You think if you took the skills you've learned now and acquired, especially from your second time being an orientation leader, do you think there might have been a strategy or a way you could have maybe eased him into it more gently, or figured out a way to communicate with him more effectively that you could have gotten those changes in place?
I don't think so, only because this dude is like just way beyond stuck in his ways.
Gotcha.
And granted the circumstance, like he knew me since I was like 16, so he like saw me like how I was originally, so like I just don't know if he like but
that's fair.
Yeah, eventually like it just gets to the point where you gotta move on and just like let it go.
Yeah. And do you think letting go and just stepping back from a situation can sometimes be a great example of being a leader, just to know when to walk away and not deal with a particular person or situation anymore?
Yeah, because sometimes, like, as much as you might care about somebody, like, they're doing you more harm than good. So,
yeah,
like, it's definitely, like, an example of, like, being strong and, like, trusting yourself.
Yeah, makes sense. And then just to go the complete opposite way too, was there ever a time you felt you overperformed as a leader, where you went beyond what people, I guess more not beyond what your standards were, but beyond what people expected of you, what someone else expected of you?
Yeah. I think last year when I actually got my orientation group, like, it was just like the perfect combination of everything. Like, because from what I hear from other people on the team, like, when you're a first-time OL, it's really hard to like get it right away. But I think I just got it right away, and like my group to this day, like I've been seeing a bunch of them around. Like they're all still friends with each other. A lot of them are even living together now.
Oh, really?
So like, I just think that I was like ready for it. And then like this year, when I had my new group, like it just wasn't the same. Like, there's a lot of factors that go into that. I don't know if I want to dive into all that right now, but so like it was kind of interesting going from having like a really amazing group to having one that was still amazing, but like just like a lot less people. Like I had like about half the people that I did the first.
Like just numbers wise?
Yeah, like I had about like 20 people my first year, and then like about like 8 to 10 this year. So
yeah, was there more orientation leaders this year? Is that what
there was? Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. Why do you think the size of the group kind of affected how, like, the ability for them to get closer, because there's more people? Or?
Yeah, and then also since there were more orientation leaders, they ended up pairing me up with another orientation leader. So there's two of us for one group of like, and then the girl that they placed me with, God bless you, Isabella, she's just like much more like quiet and than me. So like,
Okay.
a lot of the times I felt like I had to take on even like extra responsibility and like push her to like step up, as well as like keep a group together. So it was just like a lot. But yeah, as far as like a time where I think I like excelled, it's definitely last year, and then also this year too. I took on the role of like facilitating one of the traditions of the program, and so I presented in front of the entire freshman class like my take on the activity, like what it is, and then I presented some of my peers, they shared their stories, and then I closed it out and sent everybody off to participate in the activity themselves.
Okay.
But throughout that whole process, I was like helping my peers that were sharing their stories like craft their stories and feel like comfortable to present in front of the whole class, because it was something that I did last year, and I think that went so well.
That's sick. So you ended up taking that role and doing all that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you telling me. That's sick that you got to do that.
That was so sick. I was at the club the other night and fucking, I'm taking a piss, and some kid, he's like to me, "Yo, what school do you go to?" I'm like, "Bentley." He's like, "Me too, dude. Were you an orientation leader?" He's like, "Dude, I remember." It was like some like foreign kid that like was in the crowd, but he recognized me from that presentation.
Funny. Was he a freshman this year or just like a freshman?
Yeah, like freshman.
Okay, it's so funny. It's so funny. How do you think the difference between, so obviously you presented the year before too, and that must have been a great feat to take away. What were like the difference between presenting and then like introducing everyone to their stories?
Yeah, so presenting like my story, my own story, it is a lot more like about me. So it was about like taking a piece of me and sharing it with everybody, right? So for this year, it was more about like everybody else. So it's like I wanted to make sure that they all correctly understood what was supposed to be happening and how to make the most of it.
Yeah.
So those would, I say, the two different like lenses of it, last year versus this year.
Yeah. I guess like in your own head and mind, what did you find more difficult? Coming up with your own story and sharing your own like words and thoughts, or helping someone else?
Helping someone else.
So helping someone else is much harder?
Because I wanted to make sure it was like perfect. Like versus when I'm sharing my own story, it's like this is my story, I can say it however I want to. Versus like helping other people and like crafting a presentation for everybody, like I didn't want to make sure that like I had a tough time like coming up with the presentation and making sure I was hitting all the points
to like introduce everybody.
Yeah and like what the activity was and kind of my take on it. Like I had a tough time writing that compared to my story that I wrote last year, like which just kind of came pretty easily to me. So
do you think, so obviously it was more challenging maybe on like the skill level, do you think it was easier to speak?
It was definitely okay, actually like speaking in front of everybody and what I ended up like saying, it was definitely easier to like introduce people,
but coming up with the actual material,
but like when you're actually like being vulnerable in front of that many people, because the story that you share, it's like something like personal and not like I should talk about my chest, like that was my story, so like everybody else's stories are similar, like deep stuff like that, like versus this year I'm just like was sharing my take on what the activity was.
Okay. It's interesting. It's almost like emotionally harder to present yourself, skill like writing wise, and like maybe like on a skill level wise, more difficult to present other people.
Yeah, so like I didn't feel any nerves presenting this year, but last year I was shitting my brains out.
Yeah. So if you had to do it again, what side do you think you'd rather be on? Would you rather be on the sharing your own story or helping other people cultivate and spread their own stories?
I mean, I like them both. They're both like rewarding in different senses.
Yeah.
But as far as like being a leader, I think what I did this year, just because like you get to help other people achieve that same level of like fulfillment that you felt after doing it. Like there was a moment for this year where we were not getting like volunteers, and so they were like, you might have to do it again. But like I didn't want to do that because I wanted to see other people get the chance to do that. And actually one of the guys that shared this year, after the program was done, we did this thing called like fishbowl, where they put 2 chairs in front of the whole team with a microphone, and 2 people can go up and sit in the chairs, and as long as there's 2 people in the chairs, you can talk in the microphone and just say anything.
Yeah.
That's honestly a really cool activity. But one of the guys that shared, like he like expressed his gratitude for like me pushing him to do it, and how he felt like so liberated from everything now.
That's so cool.
And it was like, he said it was like the best moment of his life, and I was like, that's fucking sick.
That's so cool. So helping other people is much more fulfilling then?
I think so. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, because once I did my part, like, it was really the best. Like, after I shared my story, it's really the best feeling I've ever had in the world, like, straight up.
Yeah.
But like this year, it just made me like happier or like prouder that other people got the chance to experience that.
That makes sense. So going on the basis of the different ways you've led before. So obviously you've led in personal relationships, professional relationships, everything like that. What do you think it means to be a leader in a professional setting versus a more personal setting?
I think there's a lot of overlap. But in a professional setting, I think that sometimes leaders can get away with not having as much as a personal connection with people. Like sometimes like the CEO of a company can feel like they're not like a real person because they don't have the ability to like have personal connections with every single employee.
Yeah.
So I think that like being a leader in your personal life can also be being a leader in a professional life, in the sense that like you can work with a group of people and those could be all like personal connections that you have, but then try to lead by example within that setting.
Yeah. So in the professional setting, obviously the CEO of a company, if he has 1,000 employees, can't make a close connection with everyone within that company. So how do you think someone who's in that kind of leadership position would still touch everyone in a way to make the company grow, or make himself known as like a good person that's here to help them cultivate their ideas, but doesn't necessarily have a personal relationship with them?
Well, I think that like it starts by like making sure you're like announcing to everybody, like making frequent visits to everywhere that you can. And then also it's, in my eyes, about the team that you have around you. So like say you have the CEO at the top, then you have like 5-10 trusted people there, and then they all have their own teams, they all have their own teams, they all have their own teams, and like that's the way things can be passed down.
So it's about the way they scale it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, obviously, I'm assuming you didn't have a chance to talk to every single incoming freshman this year
No.
at Bentley, right? So do you think you got the opportunity with that kind of mindset in place? Do you think you got the opportunity to touch everyone that came? Oh God, how long has it not been recording for? You think?
I don't know, but we can just cut the video, honestly. So how do I think? I think that the way that I was with like the new members of the team this year, that a lot of those qualities that I was trying to pass on were passed on to the incoming. Because I think, like, I could name every single person on the team this year, and I went out of my way to make a connection with every single person. So
yeah. So you think you touched the whole class by connecting with everyone who was
probably
in
not the
leadership.
whole class, but
You know what I mean? But you connected with everyone in those leadership positions to try to
Yeah.
yeah. And then, so going back towards more of a personal relationship, those people you have, like your family, your close friends, things of that sort, how do you feel you can be a leader in those settings and really bring the most value and get the most value from the people you're very closely surrounded with?
could you reword that?
So, I guess how do you make sure you're showing you care the most to everyone, and then also letting them know, like when they're showing care to you, that you're very grateful and accepting of their help as well?
I don't know, I think it's just with your words. Like, you can tell people you're grateful, tell people you care about them, and then follow that with your actions. Like, I love to say actions speak louder than words, because it's true. Like, you can say like all these things, like, oh, I'm grateful, oh, I love you, oh, yada yada, but if you don't follow that up with your actions, then it means nothing to me.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Do you think most people, if you strictly go off that action mindset, so let's say you show love mostly just through actions, you think someone would be accepting if you never told them you love you too, but you showed it through actions? Or do you think most people want to hear both?
I don't know, it might be harder, like,
Maybe go
without
for a less extreme example, like a really close friend. Like you go and you help them like move a couch, something like that, or they come and help you move a couch. You don't say they're grateful, but maybe you buy them a drink or you buy them a lunch. Do you
yeah,
think
I mean, I
action
think
like
everybody's different, like,
that?
but like for me, I don't need to like hear it half the time. Like, as long as I'm being shown it, like, hearing it is nice, but like, I mean, obviously you'd like to see both, but hey.
Yeah. Personally, you personally like to see the action of someone reciprocating.
Yeah, like, that means more to me.
And then, do you have, just, I don't know if we're going to wrap it up, do you have an example of showing a gratitude towards someone through just the actions you take?
I mean, I guess I could just use, like, living with somebody. Like, if you have a couple extra minutes of free time, like cleaning up a little bit, or, I don't know, doing something like nice without like there being anybody around to like see you do it, like, that to me is something that I would do. But
Yeah. Well, that's about all we got for the leadership. Any other things you wanted to add in about being a leader? Any like words of inspiration, a mantra, something?
I think there's a ton of different good quotes to do it, but I think that I use this quote before, but it's like strong men don't bring others down, they lift them up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is like, to me, what it means to be a leader. It's to bring up the team that you're with.
That's beautiful. I think we just end it right there.
Hey, type shit. This has been episode 11. Thank y'all for watching. More life.